lay it out in the most basic terms. Like, what is going on here right now between the conference and FSU and Clemson?
So Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC all kind of want the same thing. They, according to the legal papers, they want a judge to, their judge in their venue to weigh in on the exit fee and the grant of rights. The exit fee is $130, $140 million, where if Florida State leaves tomorrow, that is what they have to pay. Florida State and Clemson think, it's just poppycock, we shouldn't pay anything. The ACC says you should pay all of it. You all signed it. So that's the first part. The second part is the grant of rights, which is, the schools granted or gave their TV rights to the conference, maybe through 2036. There's some dispute over that. In any case, they gave their TV rights to the conference for a certain period of time. So now the question is, do those TV rights, does that TV money, go to the ACC if Florida State is in the Big Ten or Clemson's in the SEC or whatever it is? So they're all wanting a judge in their preferred venue to weigh in on this, and obviously by their arguments. So that's kind of the most basic thing. And the ACC sued Florida State. Florida State sued the ACC the next day. There's dispute over who sued who first. Clemson sued the ACC. The ACC sued Clemson back. And that's where we are, and that's my off season.
How significant is the location where these are taking place? Like you've said, you want somebody in your venue to be ruling on this. How much will that affect these different cases where they're actually taking place?
It depends on who you ask. The technical lawyer answer is it doesn't matter, because all of the judges that are going to rule on this are all accomplished. They're all there for a reason. They're going to rule fairly and by the book and all that stuff. Okay, that's the technical answer. But it's not a secret. Every lawyer wants to argue in his or her preferred venue. Maybe it's just a matter of I'd rather stay at home, right? The judge in the Florida State case went to Florida State. The judge in Florida, the judge in North Carolina went to UNC. Is that going to matter? You would hope not, but maybe there's a tiny, tiny little seed in there that it would matter. The other thing, and I don't have my head wrapped around this fully, is there could be some strategic in the weeds reasons why this matters. Maybe business law in North Carolina, 6.3.8.9.B_7, whatever it is a little bit different in North Carolina, and that favors the ACC, where the equivalent law in Florida is a tiny bit different and favors Florida State. So those are kind of some hypothetical reasons why it matters, but we're doing a lot of talking about, honestly, something that first of all, I don't think it's going to matter on a practical level. And secondly, I don't think it's going to matter anyway, because I would be stunned if this actually goes to court and there is a trial. I don't know that anybody really expects that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that's the way that it's headed right now. When you look at some of the arguments that are being made, and I know, again, we were just talking about this, we're not lawyers or we're not judges. We don't know how this would typically go in the court of law, but like reading through some of the ways Florida State was trying to argue this, I was kind of like, man, it just seems like they're trying to muck this up as much as they can. And they're getting into John Swofford and nepotism claims, just crazy stuff with Raycon back in the day. How legit do these arguments seem to be, best as you can tell?
Florida State's best argument to me in terms of like the actual practicality here, and I'll explain what I mean, why I'm saying that in a second, is that the ACC, the argument that the ACC didn't follow its rules, right? Again, I'm not a lawyer. It seems to me like a conference suing a school is material. That seems like a pretty big deal. And it is not in dispute that when the ACC filed its suit in Charlotte, they did not vote on it beforehand. They had some discussions, but the members did not vote, yes, file the lawsuit. They filed this, they amended a complaint. They filed an amended complaint after the fact, and the judge in North Carolina ruled yesterday that ratification counts. But to me, that was Florida State's best argument, is there were rules, there's protocols in place, y'all have a constitution, y'all didn't file it, therefore we, Florida State, filed first. That to me has been the best argument. But the other stuff, some of it's kind of hit, some of it's missed, some of it's probably not that relevant. However, the practical part is only one component to this. You also have to remember, to me, there's a political component to this. And people much smarter than me have said this as well, where, yes, Florida State wants to win in the court of law. If this goes to trial, the judge to rule in Florida State's favor. They obviously want that. However, in the event that it doesn't get there, in the event that it settles beforehand, which I think is the most likely outcome by far, are there some political points that they can score along the way by trying, like you said, to muddy it up, to muck it up, right? by throwing as much mud around as possible, raising a big stink, where maybe the ACC finally says, you know what, you're getting into the family of our former commissioner. That's not good. Let's try and settle this. So that's kind of one of the parts playing out behind the scenes. And it's interesting too, just to see how different schools are handling it differently. Florida State and Clemson, they're kind of kissing cousins, I think, in this, where they're very similar in their brand. Obviously now both of them have sued and are exploring an exit. Florida State was a lot louder about it. Clemson was quieter. Some of it is state law could allow Clemson to be quieter, but Florida State could have done this in a more delicate manner, let's put it that way, than what they chose to do. And, I'm not telling you which one is right or wrong, but there's certainly been differences there. And even some of the other schools, Miami being a lot more quiet about it than North Carolina as they kind of weigh their future. So it is interesting to see the different kind of dynamics and conversations going on here.
Well, another one of the dynamics that seems to be in play is ESPN, who was very upset by the revelation that there is actually like an out clause in the grant of rights in 2027. So that was news to everybody. And Florida State seems to be saying, hey, we should just be able to reveal all the financial details here. ESPN is basically saying like, no, these are trade secrets. We can't have that get out there. And it kind of leaves you wondering like, all right, well, what is there that could be out there? How intense is that debate that is going on right now? And how will that factor into all this?
Yeah, it's certainly intense. It's certainly, and it matters, right? First of all, the ESPN ACC TV contract, that multimedia rights agreement, is one of the most important parts of this whole conversation from the legal aspect. What exactly does it say? And what does that mean for Florida State's case, for Clemson's case, for the ACC's case? So that's very interesting. Clemson just filed something here this week about kind of the discovery they're wanting to do in the South Carolina lawsuit. And the only document that they've requested, again, this is first inning, top of the first or whatever. The only document they requested was the ESPN agreement because they want to know what's in there so they can craft their arguments and their defenses are attacked depending on which jurisdiction accordingly. So it's very significant. Whether it gets out there publicly, I don't have a good read on how much that matters. The TV, how much School X is getting or how much the ACC is getting, the SEC is getting, that's kind of already out there. No, we don't know with certainty that in 2029, the SEC will get this and it will be broken down X, Y, Z. But on a practical level, I'm not sure how much that matters. But maybe there's there are some trade secrets here where it is really relevant. I just don't have a good read on that yet.
You brought up North Carolina and Miami, and I know there's been chatter with North Carolina, and their situation's interesting now with that board and how they may be tied together with NC State a little bit on some of this stuff. But are you anticipating North Carolina and or Miami jumping in on this too with their own lawsuits?
North Carolina is the wild card. I want to say the wild card, but they would be more so than Florida State and Clemson probably. They'd be the most attractive candidate, right? Like if the ACC blew up tomorrow, North Carolina would be the one getting the most calls. Notre Dame is kind of a member, so let's put them to the side for a second. But to the extent that academics still matters, and it does technically, North Carolina is an elite public institution. That would matter a lot for the Big Ten. North Carolina is right next to South Carolina and Tennessee. So it's a border state for the SEC. That is something that matters to them. It's a big state. Obviously, you get all the Olympic sports and the basketball program and all that stuff. UNC is a very attractive commodity. So I don't know what they are doing behind closed doors, but if we fast forward for, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, it's hard to see the ACC in its current existence being there, right? And if Florida State and Clemson are out, I would be very surprised if North Carolina stays. Miami, Virginia Tech, to me, those are kind of some of the NC State. They're kind of in the middle there, where it just depends on how does this look like. If Florida State goes to the SEC, does the Big Ten say yes? We definitely need Miami because we need a presence there, right? There's so many different ways those cookies could crumble, but to me, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina are kind of the top three that, if and when this thing implodes, they're going to be the ones heading out the door first.